top 5 NFL offensive play callers. We talk coaches a lot on this channel. We are very critical of some coaches and very vocal on who is a good coach and who is a bad coach. VSiN is my favorite sports network. I love them. Stormy Bonatoni is on the left, Michael Lombardi on the right. My top 5 offensive play callers. Okay, so obviously this is not taking into effect, the head coach or like your ability to be a tried and true head coach. It's not talking about any of that stuff. It's strictly offensive play caller. So what do I look for in an offensive play caller? Creativity. Can you do things that are out of the box? Is your offense innovative? Play calling. Can you call plays at the right time? How do you know when to push certain buttons, when to not? And also, can you get your best players the ball? How can you make certain players good depending on their skill set? Can you elevate certain players? Top of my head, I haven't obviously thought about this until this video right now. I would say number 1 for me is probably Kyle Shanahan. I love Kyle Shanahan. I think he might be my favorite coach in the NFL. Probably is. He is. But what he's been able to do with a rotating room of quarterbacks, his play calling is as innovative as it gets. He can elevate anyone. He's elevated his entire offense. His scheme, his play calling has basically won San Francisco games for the last couple seasons, for the last like three seasons. He is the difference maker. Like how Patrick Mahomes or players like that are the difference maker for their offense, Kyle Shanahan is the difference maker. If Dennis Allen was the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, they wouldn't have made the playoffs last year, I'll tell you that. Because he wouldn't be creative enough to elevate that team. Kyle Shanahan certainly can. So I'll have him at 1. I'll have Andy Reid at 2. I think Andy Reid, big fan as well. I've said he's probably the second best coach of all time. Offensive play calling wise, it's easier when you have Patrick Mahomes, but his consistency with innovating with that offense, he made the offense better even without Tyreek Hill. What impresses me with Andy Reid is situations like against the Bills when they had 14 seconds or whatever it was. Andy Reid dials up the perfect play at the perfect time to get in the perfect situation. Even in the Super Bowl last year, some of the plays he dialed up to kind of claw them back. I'll have Andy Reid at 2. 3, I'll say 3, 4, and 5, I think, are in no order. I think you're going to have Sean Payton, Brian Daboll, and is McVay in there? McVay, I'll put McVay in there. I got a feeling Lombardi might disagree with that. But let me talk about Daboll real quick. Daboll, I give him a lot of credit for how good Buffalo was. And he obviously elevated Daniel Jones immediately. Like Daniel Jones became a pretty good quarterback with Brian Daboll calling the plays. Brian Daboll was able to, in 1 year, he was able to elevate Daniel Jones to look like a pretty competent franchise quarterback. Mike McDaniel, I think, could maybe be in the conversation if we're just talking strictly offensive play callers. But I'm interested to see what Lombardi says. Zach Taylor, just looking at the Super Bowl odds board, Zach Taylor, I wouldn't put in there. Sean McDermott, not a fan. Ken Dorsey, not a fan. Sirianni, I don't think you can give him that credit yet. Obviously, no one on the Cowboys. Jets, Nathaniel Hackett is the opposite. And then McDaniel, we talked about there. So
today's going to be our first iteration of Top 5 Tuesdays. And I love the back and forth on what today's topic was going to be, because initially we were like, okay, let's talk top 5 NFL head coaches this year. And you're like, you know what? I actually want to talk coordinators. Let's talk offense.
Well, if we're just talking coordinator, well, we'll see what he said. I think my list will be pretty similar. So we'll let it play.
And we ended up getting head coaches anyways, so we altered it to play callers, Michael. And I'm super excited to hear who your top 5 are.
Well, I'll start at 5 with Ben Johnson, and I think.
Okay, Ben Johnson for the Lions is worth a shot because of a shout of what he did last year. He, again, just like with Daboll, he elevated the entire offense. He would be in that honorable mention for me with Mike McDaniel. He's real good, and we'll see what he can do again. He turned down a lot of head coaching roles to stay with Detroit and to stay doing what he did last year. So we'll see, but I do like him.
I think the criteria for being a great play caller is adjusting, right? And it's also being timely. So every first drive of the game, you can script it for success. You can kind of work your way. You've got time to think. You're at your desk.
Adjusting is a huge thing. You see that with like Kellen Moore has trouble with that, where you just stick to your game plan. You stick to what happens or what you think is going to happen. There is no halftime adjustment. There's no you're not moving off of anything. You're not like reading the game. You're just sticking with the script. And I think that absolutely is what a good coach, good player caller can do. He can see what's happening, adjust to it quickly, and it's almost like a chess match. And that's why a lot of the people who are going to be on this list, the teams are really good in the second half.
You can work it. But the true ability of a coach shines in the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah.
When you've got to really demonstrate your ability to adjust to what they're doing, to have an alternate game plan. Remember, the first quarter is assessment. The second and the third quarter are about adjustments. And the fourth quarter is a standalone game. And I thought Ben Johnson's fourth quarter play calling was outstanding last year. I think he did a tremendous job. Go back to that Jet game when he called the tight end up.
The fourth quarter, too, you're up against the clock. The clock becomes a legitimate variable where you can't call certain plays. I'm always screaming during Saints games because we're calling plays at the wrong time and we're not factoring in the clock. We're not factoring in like, hey, we just blew 40 seconds because we called these plays at this time instead of, because then timeouts are more valuable, downs are more valuable, every play is more valuable, the field is more valuable, points are more valuable, so play calling becomes more valuable in the fourth quarter as well. I think if you want to see a really good coach, watch how they handle the final 2 minutes of the first half and then the fourth quarter. If they can't manage their timeouts, if they can't manage their clock to get points, like Shanahan's really good at that. Lincoln Riley is really good at that in college. They can always squeeze another possession out at the end of the half, and they'll go to the locker room kicking a field goal, or they'll go to the locker room scoring. They always manage the clock to where they know exactly what buttons to press to, hey, we're going to end up with half of a drive here. We're going to end up with 40 seconds on the clock, a minute on the clock.
Needed a play, losing control of the game, got it back. I look for that. I don't look at yards particularly. I look at someone who can call plays at the right time and win the situation.
Yeah,
and I think Ben Johnson did that really well. So he's on my list as the number 5 guy. Number 4.
And Michael, hold on, just real quick.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Real quickly, just before you get to 4, like that offense went from one that we were like, okay, how's Jared Goff going to work into this? Are they going to be, what type of an offense are we really going to see? And they ended up being one of the most exciting and dynamic in the league. I know you said yards aren't particularly high on your list of necessary things for an offense to be.
I agree. I don't think you can just sort by yards per play or yards per game and then assume that the play caller is good. I don't think you can do that.
Successful, but they were like 4th in yards per game, 5th in points per game, and they needed that offense to be powerful because the defense had struggled so much. They were winning games in shootouts. So Ben Johnson, I think, did a great job. Go ahead. Who's your number 4?
Well, then Sean McVay, obviously a very good, won a Super Bowl. Lost the Super Bowl because he didn't adjust, right? He loses to New England because New England kind of came with him and basically set 2 edges and made it challenging for him to move the football. And
McVay's interesting because McVay is a relatively simple offensive scheme. Like he is a big play action guy. He's a big run first guy. His quarterbacks are always kind of looking at the field in tiers. It's a simple offensive scheme, but it works, and he knows what he's doing, and he knows how to navigate it. And on one hand, I guess you could on one hand you could say, well, it's so simple and he's stuck in his way or whatever. If he can't establish the run, or if play action is not available, he'll struggle. But I like McVay. I don't know. He's certainly not the play caller that Shanahan is, but he deserves to be on the list.
That game, and he took responsibility. But Sean's got a dynamic mind, and when he can get it going with the run game, he's very good at adjusting, and he's very good at making the game easier for the quarterback. I mean, look what he did with Baker Mayfield, the final drive against the Raiders. He leads them down the field. They win that game. Had no business winning that game with a quarterback who didn't come back. So Sean's outstanding.
What I like about McVay is, and Michael kind of alluded to this, McVay is in control of the game. McVay is, you can see some coaches, the game gets away from them. They blow timeouts. They blow possessions. They're frantic. They don't know what the clock is. This is all just the Mike McCarthy playbook, basically. But McVay is always in control of the game. He always knows the timeout situation. He always knows the fourth down situations. He always knows where the quarter is, the half is. He has a great game clock.
The other guy that I think is tremendous as an offensive play caller is Josh McDaniels. I mean, first of all, he has Jarrett Stidham playing quarterback against the 49ers, who in a game that's meaningful, right, puts 454 yards on him. Yeah. 284 yards passing. I mean, didn't miss a beat. So
McDaniels at 3 is wild. I mean, that might be a bit of a Homer New England situation there for Michael. This is a lot for me. I mean, I'm not going to say he's not a good offensive play caller, but I don't think he's top 5 for sure. I would not have him over the 7 people I named. Top 10, we can have a conversation about that, but 3, I don't know.
His ability to adjust, his ability to take away what the defense wants to do, his play calling is very good. Well, you could say, well, he had Tom Brady. No, I think if you were to talk to Tom Brady and put Tom Brady down and say, who's the best offensive coach you've ever played for in your career? I think hands down it's Josh McDaniels. I know how much respect Tom Brady has for Josh McDaniels. I've talked to him about it. So as a play caller, I think he's outstanding. The next guy is Kyle Shanahan. And Kyle...
Okay, 2 and 1 are going to be Shanahan and Reed. So... I had them flipped, but that's who this is going to be.
As we learned from George Kittle, does a great job of scheming the run, tying the run to the passing game. Really a timely play caller. Understands how to attack the nuances of the defense and get him into the right play. Partly the job of a play caller is to avoid the negative play, to avoid the bad play. And Kyle does a nice job with that. Plus, Kyle does a great job of getting the ball to the players that can make the plays.
That's where Kyle's really good. Kyle is really good at making his best players stand out. Andy Reid's good at that too. And that is difficult. That's where the chess match comes in. Everyone knows blank player, on whatever team is going to get the ball. To be able to still get them the ball and still have them have success is the ultimate chess match. Like, you don't think everyone knows that Deebo Samuel or whoever is going to get the ball, but they still can have success because Kyle masks them or they get creative. Same with Andy Reid and like Travis Kelce. It's 3rd and 11. You don't think that the defense knows, hey, we need to stop Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid still finds a way to get him the ball.
Yards after the catch. Get them moving. A lot of times you'll see offenses where the receiver's backs are turned to the quarterback. Well, there's not going to be many yards after the catch in that situation. But when you're throwing the ball to moving targets, there's going to be. And I think Kyle does that. And then to me, the best of all of them is Andy Reid, because Andy Reid is so good at adapting what he does to the quarterback. I mean, think back to Donovan McNabb. It was all play action, double teams, move him a little bit, set him up so that he could see high-low on the outside. Then he goes with Alex Smith, and he comes up with a Utah offense, which is West Coast Utah. And now he's got Mahomes, and he could kind of do a little bit of everything that he wants to do. And he's still a tough guy. He still will try to be physical with his offensive line. So to me,
no one can adjust like Andy Reid. Even like who they are and what they do. So I definitely agree with that. Like, Andy Reid is he's so fluid in what he wants to do, what he's going to try and do, given the players and given the situation and all that stuff, on top of how good he is as a game manager and calling the actual game. But his game planning, Andy Reid off a bye, things like that, like his record off a bye, that just goes to show his prep and his planning is so far ahead of everybody else.
Those are guys that when they're in a game, and this is important for betting, when they're matched up against another good defensive coach, you could study the history of these 5 guys and how they reacted, and that'll lead you to deciding on where you want to play.
Andy Reid, I think a very, very appropriate top selection for your best offensive play caller, especially because I remember thinking last year headed into the 2022 season, all right, this offense isn't going to have their deep threat and Tyreek Hill anymore. A number of reasons why this offense could take a step back, and then narrator, they did not take a step.
And that's a great shout to Andy Reid, is where another coach would have said, okay, we're going to try and do the exact same thing without Tyreek Hill and Juju Smith-Schuster will just step into the Tyreek Hill role. Andy Reid looked at it like, all right, I've got Montez Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, and what am I going to do with these guys? And he completely changed the offense. He didn't just make one of them put on Tyreek Hill's shoes. He completely changed everything. And if Travis Kelce got traded or something, he would completely change the offense again. He wouldn't just say, okay, next man up, you're now Travis Kelce. We're going to run the same plays. Andy Reid would know, like, I have to adapt. And he if they got DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to know exactly how to adjust the offense to where DeAndre Hopkins is going to shine. He wouldn't just do the same thing he did last year because it was successful. Andy Reid is a thinker. He's a tinkerer. He's a hell of a coach. I think he's a Super Bowl away from really, really knocking on Belichick's door as like the greatest coach ever.
Back, because they end up just leading the league in just about every stat that you can imagine here. And a large reason just because Andy Reid obviously so smart in what he does, and the pairing of him and his quarterback and Patrick Mahomes so dynamic. One quick follow-up to your number 3 selection in Josh McDaniels. We know that the general expectations for them in the AFC West, the Raiders, isn't particularly high. Their win total set at 7.5. They're a long shot in the division. But with their new quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, coming in and the familiarity that they have, knowing that the offense will have to carry the defense another year, how important is he to the development in this first stage of Jimmy G leading that offense?
The McDaniels at 3 is questionable, because if the offense struggles under Jimmy Garoppolo, at some point you're gonna have to say, well, maybe McDaniels, maybe he ain't all that. You know what I mean? If they're really good, if Garoppolo's good, okay, sure, fine. But this is a risky move for Lombardi to put McDaniels at 3, given what they're up against this season.
Well, I think Josh knows Jimmy. Had him since he was a rookie, understands what he can do. Jimmy hasn't really been back in that offense. This offense he doesn't have to hold the football. Remember, Brady can get rid of it. Garoppolo learned that. I think that'll help their offense. And, throwing the ball, Devontae Adams, you got Jacoby Myers. They're saying Hunter Renfro's back to where he was a year ago. Michael Mayer needs to be a good play for them at tight end. So, one thing about McDaniel, last year, without a lot of guys besides Devontae Adams, they moved the football. They couldn't stop anybody.
Yeah, no, I agree with you for sure. We'll see how things play out week 1 as they get started in a
interesting conversation. I love talking coaches. I love talking the game strategy and all that stuff. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Who is your top 5 offensive play callers? Or even if you don't want to say 5, who do you think is the best offensive play caller in the NFL? Or what do you think about the play calling of your favorite team? My favorite team is the Saints, obviously, and I think the play calling is probably bottom of the NFL. So let me know what you think about your favorite team. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.